Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
Okay, well
that's
let's
great.
go. Yeah, perfect. Okay, well let's go ahead, everyone, and it's at least the day I'm recording it. It's July 30th. It's happy Ethereum Day. Happy birthday, Ethereum. 11 years old. I guess for you guys there, it's already the day after Ethereum turned 11 years old. So hopefully it's still on and working. But Langer, is good to see you. Mav, good to have you on.
Hey Ken, good to be here. Hey, good to see you.
Yeah, perfect. I've been traveling a little bit and apologize for missing. I now understand the challenges of traveling and time zones. So I don't know, Mav, how you keep it all straight in your head. But we're very glad to be here with Langers, who will do kind of a community call update here. And I saw that just recently, Langers, you put a post up on the DAO forum, which was a protocol development roadmap update. And I
Yeah,
thought,
I got like a protocol update.
oh, and hey, Nick, is that I hear Nick? How you doing, man? No, he's gone. That was a flyby and gone. I always love hearing from Nick, though. Maybe he'll come back. But Langers, I saw you put the protocol development roadmap up on there, and I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about that, and you could update the community here.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, so yeah, as per uh, the protocol update, the team have been pretty busy the last few months, obviously. So a big thing, or a kind of a side quest, but something we've been working on most recently, has been the Glamsterdam release for Ethereum. So the obviously that's kind of coming up. So we wanted to make sure that we were completely across that, so that when that lands, we are kind of ready for it. So so we've been putting a bit of effort into scoping out what things affect us from a protocol perspective. We've highlighted a couple of things that are going to affect us. One of the things, the I call it stable containers, for the beacon state, actually affects us in a good way, because it means that the protocol doesn't have to change as often when Ethereum does forks. So that's really great, but it does mean both, EPBS and this stable containers thing means that we do need to actually change the protocol. So Kane's been working on that, and Fornex has been working on the smart node side of things. There's still quite a lot of testing to do around that, but we've scoped it out, and a lot of the contract side is all done, and um, most of the smart node stuff is done. There's still quite a lot of scoping out in terms of, because ePBS actually changes the way that the infrastructure talks to each other. So and so that's still a little bit uncertain, but Fornax is all over that. So Gladstone is going really well, and that we should be able to knock that off quite quickly. Um, then the other thing is obviously Saturn. Actually, a little bit. Did you want to stop on that to see if you have any questions?
Yeah, I do, and thanks for pausing there for a second. So yeah, I guess Glamsterdam is the next Ethereum hard fork, right? And as you said, there's a number of EIPs that are being included in it, and I think maybe the cornerstone EIP, at least for the consensus layer, was changes to the just design of the consensus layer, right? And enshrining proposer builder separation. And I guess they're nearing test nets, right? They're maybe finishing up on, I think, DevNet 8 or something like that. And, they're coming up on test net. So in terms of node operators, like just help me on the kind of timing a little bit. Like, do you want to release the changes to the rocket pool protocol kind of ahead of the test net, and then you're asking for volunteers to try it out on the hoodie test net, and then I guess you'd have to do some actual protocol incline updates ahead of the mainnet launch. I guess, I don't know if I mean, obviously they haven't announced dates for the mainnet, but it sounds like they might happen in early fall. Is that correct? Just kind of help me visualize this for a little bit down, a few months down the road here.
Yeah, that's a great question because um, the timelines aren't really known. There's kind of like an idea, although they are still on DevNets. They're not, and then they're on kind of like late DevNets, but they're still putting stuff in the release. So so that's kind of like an interesting place to be because it looks like it won't be quick, but yeah. So until they give us really a so we're testing it internally because we're using the same testing tools that the Ethereum use to test their forks, or the core devs use to test their forks. So that'll give us super confidence that we're easy. But until it's on a test net, you don't really know. So what we're really waiting for is them to say, all right, it's going to be on the test net X on this date, and that'll be the hoodie testnet, obviously. And then that's when we get people to kind of like test out the whole experience. Until then, deploying a DevNet is actually that we can share with other people is actually very with the fork changes is very difficult. So I think what we'll do is we'll just test it when it goes through on the test net. But as I said, we will have a good confidence that everything's perfectly fine because we would have been testing exactly the same as the way that Ethereum tests is with internally. So yeah, that's basically going to be the plan. Is once I know when it's going to be on Hoodie, we can start working with beta testers on Hoodie. But we're just ahead of the game at the moment and just waiting for them to launch it on Hoodie.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, please continue with your protocol update.
Cool. Yeah. So then the next thing there is basically Saturn 2. So with Saturn 2, we've made some really good progress. We've obviously had a little bit of a side quest with Amsterdam, but we'd already made a fairly good inroads into Saturn 2 anyway. So what we've been working on is RPIP 73 and RPIP 80. Now RPIP 73 is the performance exits one, and RPIP 80 is kind of how nodes get actually exited, and so yeah, so so we've been working on those two at the moment, and as I said, we've made really good progress from a contract perspective. We're pretty much code complete. There's still kind of a little bit of work to do. Definitely some refinement, some code review, and testing and that sort of thing. But we're most of the way through the actual coding part. With RPIP 80, the same. On the smart node side of things, again, Kane and Fortnite's have been working together. So we've got a lot of the proof stuff sorted out on the smart node side of things as well. Yeah, so basically those two elements are coming along really well. And RPIP 80 feeds into is actually kind of like the foundation for a lot of the work. I would say RPIP 71 is the biggest one, which is the withdrawal queue. That's probably the one that's got the most work in it. But we're starting to kind of like get through that work, which is great. The other thing that we've been doing is obviously been working with Noshua. A big shout out to Noshua for drafting the RPIPs. I've been working with Noshua to make sure that the RPIPs kind of like, have some feasibility to make sure that we can deliver what the RPIP says and it's aligned with what we can do and what we basically aligned with what we can do. And then we've been estimating them. So the last 2 weeks, basically, we've been going through each of the RPIPs, breaking them down, and then estimating them to try and get an idea of when we'll be able to deliver stuff by. And I'm kind of working on the timeline. So I need to kind of like map out our capacity over the next few months, and then map that with the effort so that I can kind of like put out a timeline. Hoping to get a timeline out next week, but so that's all kind of like progressing really well.
Yeah, maybe let me just ask a couple follow-up questions. I guess the first one is remind me, because it's been a little bit here. Do we, for Saturn II, do we have kind of a defined scope now? I know that there were a number of kind of posts and discussions about various separate RPIPs, like which ones should be in Saturn II and which ones should not. But what's the status of that? Have we actually kind of agreed upon or accepted, RPIPs for inclusion using some of the Ethereum terms here, right? Or do we still need to kind of vote on a governance model as to what RPIPs we want and don't want into Saturn II?
So I think the overall shape of the release is there. I think there are basically there's one particular RPIP that I think that there's a little bit of I'd say pushback is not is too strong a word, but there's definitely just some discussion about that one RPIP, which I think is RPIP 86, which is the increasing the megapool bond requirement. So there's definitely some talk about that. So I think it'd be good to just make sure that we are comfortable with that one. And then the voting one, I think, was mentioned in some chat about whether we should include it in the next release or the following release. So I would say we're mostly there. We're mostly there, but Noshua has already put up essentially a discussion post on that, so that's really awesome. So if you have some thoughts on that, then definitely interact within that post, because then we can go to a formal vote. Sentiment. I think usually it goes sentiment poll, and then I think he's actually got a sentiment poll in there already. But it's a sentiment poll and then formal vote. So yeah, exciting.
Yeah, very, very exciting. And then just, I guess maybe to just look a little bit at timeline or sequencing. So you said, okay, you're working on, and there should be a, relatively soon post about timeline feasibility. Okay, these are easy RPIPs, these are tough RPIPs. If we did all the RPIPs for Saturn II, this is an approximate kind of work effort timeline and that sort of stuff. But maybe maybe just kind of help me know the sequencing, like what comes next. Voting on Saturn II, the timeline then voting, kind of what happens between here and the early test nets for Saturn II. Like what happens next now?
Yeah, so I mean, getting the timeline out with the current scope is probably the next thing that we need to do. That does inform the DAO's decision on what to include in the release, whether to pull things out or whether to keep things in. And so that's why I'm working to try and get that timeline out. I mean, in theory, they're two separate things potentially, but they do kind of interact. So I think I get the timeline out. I'll put that I'll link that in the discussion so that everyone can kind of like see it. And then from that discussion, really, it'll be okay. Do we go with this included scope, or do we remove some stuff, or what? So I think that's a good kind of like sequence of events. After that, then we'll have a scope that will be able to deliver, and then so the formal vote can kind of like happen. Now the formal vote and the development process, they're in parallel anyway. So we're pretty clear that we've started ones that we know we're going to have to deliver. So that's all perfectly fine. So the governance process can kind of go in parallel to development. That doesn't hold us up or anything. But the formal vote will take a few weeks. Once in the timeline, I'll include how we're going to break up the release. I'm keen to do those devnets again because I think the devnets were actually were a good way to break it up and a good way to get the community involved, and from our point of view as well to kind of make sure things are tested. So we'll probably break it up into like a couple of devnets. Probably won't need too many, but a couple of devnets, and then there'll be hoodie devnets probably. And so once that's all kind of like, I'll lay out the devnets. As we finish things, we'll deploy them to devnets and get the community to test it. Until basically we're code complete or completely finished with the internal testing, and then we go to audit. A big thing with the timeline is I'll try to put an indicative timeline together, but the final timeline won't be in until I have information back from the auditors about when they're available to actually audit the code. But I can kind of like guess where we'll land, and then hopefully where they'll land in the indicative timeline. And then if anything changes, then I'll adjust it as we go. But obviously, we need to go through that process of getting the auditors on board in terms of getting them aware. First of all, making sure we've chosen the auditors that we're going to work with, and then secondly, getting the scope to them so that they can give us quotes and timelines and all of that sort of stuff. So there's a few things to kind of like put into place, but it's all there laid out for us, so it should be pretty easy.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that helps. Anything else from your update that you want to cover? I noticed you also had a section about the smart node on there, or is there anything about Saturn II that we haven't covered that you'd like to cover with the community?
I think I've covered Saturn II. It's a fairly large release. Obviously, it's no Saturn 1, but I would say it's kind of Houston sort of size. It kind of feels that sort of way. Although we are kind of like working through it quite well. So Houston had some like complexity, whereas this is less complex, but just just a decent amount to build. I'm very happy with where Saturn II is at the moment and the way that we're working with the community. That's really good. Smart node side of things, everything's ticking along in terms of that. I've mentioned Glamsterdam. Yeah, I think that's good. The team are working really well on that. Probably the other thing is actually the new kind of app site that Nick's built. So that is kind of like in beta at the moment. So take a look at that. There's a link to the app site from the protocol update post. So take a look at the app site, see what you think. It's kind of like the one-stop shop for node operators and rETH holders. So take a look and see what you guys think, and beta test it. Give them some feedback in the website feedback thread, and yeah. So that's been kind of like a massive project, and it's looking really good. So definitely give him some feedback on that. And yeah, that's
Can we talk
basically
about
it, I
that?
think.
Yeah, can we just talk a little bit about the app side? I guess, like for the node operators and maybe the folks in the community here, right? It's been, the Rocket dashboard by Steely, right? That is, we've been using quite a bit. And then I understand, I guess it was Nick that did the app site, right? And what's the ideal? You actually put this app site on the front end, and this is, I guess for anybody who wants to integrate Rocket Pool or holders of rETH, it can get a little bit better metricing and dashboards. Maybe share a little bit about the context of, what brought this up and what you guys are going to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, we've been developing it for quite a while, but how I would differentiate between the stuff that Steely's done. So Steely's dashboard is fantastic, and that gives you like the good overview on everything about Rocket Pool, which is amazing. I think that's going to be really useful going forward as well. The app site has a slightly different take, in the sense that it's really for node operators and rETH holders. It's kind of like the one. It's where it has everything that you interact with Rocket Pool with. So not necessarily. It has some kind of like dashboardy sort of things in it, just so that it kind of flows well. But the main thing is it's there for node operators to get specific kind of like information. So yeah, so they have very slightly different sort of focuses, but they have kind of like some similar information, but just in different ways.
Yeah, very, very helpful. And yeah, I think it's pretty neat, and I'm kind of curious to see what the community thinks of it. And it'd be great to see it, added to the front end.
I think that was basically everything from my side. Was there any other? Oh, there's the signaling RPIP. I think that was in the notes as well.
Yeah, let's.
So Dr. B, yeah.
Yeah, I guess the one other thing, just looking back at your your protocol development here, right? You talked a little bit about the work from Glamsterdam and the work from Saturn 2 here. But staying on the topic of maybe websites and APIs, is there, you mentioned the, I'll call it the app dashboard. I guess it's not really a dashboard. Maybe it is the app, right? It's it's connect to Rocket Pool and do transactions, right? You have it's both metrics and displays, as well as interact and use the protocol. So maybe it is an all-in-the-one reporting app dashboard and, using app. But do you want to talk about some of the other stuff that I think the team's been doing with like clear signing? I know that's been a big push, just with the continued accidents of signing incorrect transactions, or any of the work that you're doing in terms of the front end.
Yeah, actually, with the app site, so I would probably put it closer to like an explorer than like a dashboard. So it kind of like goes. Node operators that can actually go in there and see all of their node information, even like their uh, the attestations and all that sort of thing. So I would say it's kind of like more Explorer based rather than dashboard. So it's kind of like differentiated in that way. Yeah, so we've been working on the ClearSign stuff, which is a bit of a pain in the butt, to be honest. So Nick's put a PR up quite quickly about adding our stuff into the clear signing repo, and we're along with like I don't know a couple of hundred or tens at least of PRs in there, and they're not really merging them. So they're kind of like working on the clear signing project, but they're not really merging those PRs. And there's a whole bunch of people in there. All the protocols have raised a PR against it. So we're just kind of waiting really on them to merge the PR. Nick's babysitting the PR because he has to kind of like update it every time they change stuff. So eventually, well, hopefully they will merge it at some point, and then it will kind of be integrated into the clear signing thing. So yeah, I think the clear signing thing, from what I understand, is kind of like the idea of a de facto, not a de facto, well, a kind of a standardization of essentially clear signing metadata, and so that the hardware wallets don't have to can actually do the clear signing rather than blind signing, which is obviously fantastic. It'd be great if we weren't blind signing all the time. And so yeah, so that's it's definitely a really good thing for the ecosystem. Yeah, as long as they can move things on and merge everything. Yeah, and then there's a whole bunch of performance improvements and that we've been working on, and changes to infrastructure within the team as well. But yeah, so there's a whole bunch of stuff in the web and APIs one.
Okay, perfect. Anything else from your protocol development roadmap update that you want to share before we go on to a couple other topics?
Good. Double check.
Yeah, it seemed like, and it'd be interesting to see when we actually get to kind of deciding as a DAO and incorporating it. You mentioned that there were maybe two RPIPs in which we've seen some differing opinions on, right? I think, if I just speak in generalities, I think most of them had kind of broad consensus of support, and they've been discussed, kind of at length over the better part of probably half a year now. But it did seem like there was one about I think it's RPIP 71. This is about making certain that there's always a withdraw liquidity, right? If an rETH holder wants to redeem a large amount of rETH and back to ETH, and it exceeds the liquidity in the deposit pool, that there'd be a way to institute, protocol initiated withdrawals of validators. And one of the proposals is to, not do it in like a first in, last out process, but do it in a performance-based one, right? And I think there's another RPIP that talks about, forcing underperforming nodes. And there was, some discussion about whether, like it seemed underperforming nodes was pretty much agreed upon, but not so much about well, what about if an rETH holder wants to exit or not? Do we do that? And then the second one you mentioned was just altering the node operator deposit, right? We've been trying to lower the bonding requirement. We're down to 4 ETH here with our mega pools, but we have just way too many node operators and not enough rETH. And I guess one of the protocols or RPIPs is to propose increasing the node operator deposit to a slightly larger amount. And I guess ultimately, I suppose we want to grow the protocol, and so you sort of need both. You need both node operators and you need rETH holders that want to hold that as their liquid staking token of choice. And it's kind of there. Any kind of comments on both of those things? Obviously it's something for the PDAO to figure out, but any thoughts from you or from the team's perspective on either of those?
Yeah. So RPIP 71, we've been kind of like diving into the implementation side of that for quite a while now. I think there's still one outstanding, I'll have to double check with Nashua, but I think there's still one outstanding thing in terms of so I think at the moment, the validator selection is random. Well, actually, sorry, I should say that actually validator selection has two modes. It has a mini pool mode and a mega pool mode, and the mini pool mode is the starting mode. So effectively, we're exiting mini pools first. That's obviously to make sure that we can migrate everyone over to mega pools. With mini pools, with the validator selection, that's actually done by the ODAO, and they will prioritize higher commission mini pools over lower commission mini pools. So effectively, making sure that we optimize for lowering the commission rate for rETH. So that's kind of how mini pool selection works. Within the 20% though, or within the commission, it's kind of random. You're kind of like randomly chosen. With the mega pool ones, at the moment it's completely random. You just like chosen, and that's on chain. So there's no ODAO involvement in that. It's all kind of like done on chain. The only thing that's probably mildly as outstanding is whether there's any other condition. So the way that we've structured it enables us to add, other things in there, other constraints. So, for example, I think one that was raised was using RPL stake as a way to kind of order them on less RPL stake rather than more RPL stake. That sort of thing. So that I think is still slightly up for debate. I'll double check that with Nashua, whether that has changed or whether it's just going to be random. But yeah, that's definitely something that we've been working a lot on in terms of like RPIP 71 as a product goal. We've definitely heard from large holders, and particularly the institutional sort of types, that RPIP 71 really is necessary for them, mainly because at smaller amounts, the secondary market and the buffer is actually fine. It's worked fine for us, up until this point. But larger holders and more conservative holders definitely require that kind of guaranteed exit quality. And so RPIP 71 is definitely important for that from a product perspective. So that's definitely something to kind of like consider. RPIP 73 is a no-brainer. I think everyone agrees with the performance one, and that we should probably have that as soon as possible. So that's fine. In terms of increasing the bond requirement, I mean, I'm a bit on the fence. If I'm honest, I definitely understand why we would increase the bond, mainly because I feel it is important to try to migrate as many people over to mega pools as possible. But it's also a bit of a nightmare, because it means that the people that are currently deposited for ETH would have to kind of either exit or exit some of their validators or top up. And so it is a bit awkward to kind of like that whole process. So although I think we're doing it for the right reason, I think it's also going to be a bit of a pain in the butt. So yeah, that's probably my 2 cents on those ones.
Yeah, very, very, very helpful on those. And, I don't know how much contention there is. It was just, I saw a few contrarian opinions on those, right? For it. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on the last one that, the, I firmly believe that, Rocket Pool really should be trying to make its product, and our product is our ETH, make it, as attractive and as performance orientated as possible, right? Because you really want it to be the LST of choice for, discerning liquid staking holders, right? Um, so yeah, tell me a little bit about there's another RPIP out there also by Nashua, who I agree with you is just doing phenomenal work here. And he brought this up, I think, when we launched Saturn One, that one or more of the auditing firms had recommended that we actually put some guardrails on some of the protocol parameters, so they're less likely to be abused or exploited in the future, right? And so there were some initial guardrail settings that I think were, you, as like a first order approximation or whatever. And I think, a little bit later here, we're thinking that those could be refined a little bit and maybe, more precisely set. Any thoughts or talks about those, and kind of where would that happen? Would it happen as part of Saturn 2, or is this just a protocol setting that can happen independent of Saturn 2? I don't know if you've had a chance to look at any of those discussions yet.
Yeah, and I'm aware of the RPIP. I haven't looked at the specific changes, but I was talking to Joshua about that back in the day when we were releasing Saturn 1. So yeah, I think we're just a bit overzealous on tightening the safeguards, and some of them probably there's always kind of like a trade-off between safeguard and flexibility, and I think some of them have verged on over reducing our ability to be flexible, rather than just safeguarding. So yeah, that's we just need to review those, and they're a very, very simple change. We just need to make sure that we kind of go through each of the safeguards and check them off, but they're like super easy to change, so it's not a big deal. The only real issue actually is adding the contracts to the upgrade, but so we'll kind of try to minimize that aspect of it, but yeah, there's super easy changes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and it's yeah, as you said, it's a discussion that I think we've had months ago or whatever. But Nashua just posted that new RPIP, I think, a couple days ago, earlier this week. So it is new, but just wanted to kind of share that with the community to take a look at. And another RPIP that's up there, or coming up there for a little bit of settlement work, is our kind of voting process, right? And for those that aren't aware, there's maybe I don't know, three mechanisms of voting. I mean, I suppose one is just, informal discussions and a sentiment poll. I guess it's sort of voting, but we go to the forum website, we post the proposal, and we solicit, is there enough interest by the community in support or against, or I guess just basically enough interest on the topic, right? And then there's we used to call it snapshot voting, and I guess snapshot might also be a process, but it's also a platform, right? And unfortunately, that platform used to be free for those in the Web3 community, but now they charge for it. I guess they charge for it a little bit because just the in Rocket Pool the RPL token that is voter eligible is a staked RPL token, and not only that, it's not just a flat stake token; it's a quadratically staked token, right? So to make it a little bit more fair. So it's not some large whales that have all the vote power. And then, of course, there's the on-chain voting instrument, but that takes gas and it takes a kind of like a payload written up online, so it's a little bit more onerous, and not everything we need to decide requires code to execute. But I guess one of the things that we're looking at now is changing the snapshot voting process. Any comments or thoughts about this? I know you've been kind of engaged a little bit in those conversations.
Yeah, I'd kind of like generalize it because we generalize it to the term signaling rather than snapshot. But yeah, so the signaling um, is generally used for snapshot. It is generally used for kind of like meta votes. So votes that don't necessarily change the protocol directly, but they do change how the DAO works, or um, they formulate, or they basically ratify decisions that the DAO, the community have made. So yeah, it's a really important kind of tool for the DAO. And yeah, I mean, the use of snapshot is kind of arbitrary. There are benefits of it in the sense that it it's kind of auditable from some senses. So I mean, but it is kind of like an arbitrary provider. So yeah, the fact that we want to be a bit more flexible with that, we want the ability to be able to move to a different signaling provider. Part of the RPIPs for Saturn 2 is actually a replacement, is like a signaling replacement that we can do on chain. Gas is quite cheap, so it's so voting on chain is actually possible, but it's obviously going to take us a little bit of time to kind of like build that out. So in the meantime, we want the kind of like ability to be able to move to a different signaling platform. I know Steely's been doing a lot of work on putting that together. So in that, I think it's the RPIP 86 is the PDAO signaling RPIP, and what the RPIP does is it just enables us to be able to kind of flexibly, because the RPIP 4 is the governance RPIP, and it specifically mentions snapshot. So RPIP 86 is basically saying, yeah, it's not just snapshot. It can be chosen. It has to be like an approved thing, but we can be flexible with the solution that we use. And I think Steely's platform is the thing that we're kind of migrating to. I believe we're going to do like a parallel vote for the next one, which is the IMC nominations, just to make sure that both system or Steely's system works as expected. But then from there we can kind of like use Steely's system until we can replace it with the on-chain version, either in Saturn 2 or a release after.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, thank you very much for kind of that update there. And yeah, I encourage folks if they want to go read more or comment on it to take a look. But yeah, I think that's going to be a very useful tool for us, and certainly it will provide a cost savings, to the GMC and the PDAO if we could remove, yet another service that we're paying for, if we could bring it in-house or perform it at a lower cost. So I think that would be great. And as you mentioned, I guess just public service announcement. The IMC recently did have a call for nominees. I think the call might be closed now, and now the nominees are producing their alignment statements, right, or their position statements, so you can have a choice. But it should be coming up to vote pretty soon for IMC members. Any other topics that we didn't put on the agenda that you feel is important for the community to know? Anything you want to share?
No, I think the GMC has a round coming up, don't they?
It just finished around. I think we have an open call for round. I think it's 39. I don't know if it's opened yet. Like I said, I've been kind of out of pocket for the last couple of weeks here. I'm quickly getting updated. I know that next week, I believe on Wednesday, the GMC is having their town hall where they, kind of release the announcements for the last round. That was round 38, and have an opportunity to interact with the PDAO or just the community in whole and kind of share any of the updates from the GMC. So look for that kind of in the events channel, but that town hall is scheduled for next Wednesday, at least U.S. time Wednesday, 10 a.m. Pacific, if I recall correctly.
Awesome, great stuff.
Yeah, perfect. I for one would certainly be looking forward to that, and I'm sure a lot of the other community members are. It's always kind of interesting and turmoil kind of market times, right? Definitely down cycle. I think everybody's kind of believing in the 4-year cycle and looking for the next up cycle here, but it does seem like there's just everything on crypto Twitter and a lot going on, and kind of the restructuring of the EF, the spin-off, and a lot of these I'll say I don't know, quasi EF organizations, right? Etherealize, institutional ETH, right? ETH Labs, the continued advancement of the adoption of institutions in the space, right? And yeah, it would be great to kind of understand, especially from your point of view, Mav, what what you're hearing and what you're seeing, and just kind of some of the things that you're doing in the back end that don't get a lot of attention until we bring them up on one of your community calls. So, yeah, I for one would be very very interested in doing one of those in the near future.